Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, a US Congresswoman has caused outrage after criticising Sikh prayers in the US House. The backlash has actually been something to behold, from even the most surprising of quarters. Signs that the Khalistan movement isn't just growing in strength, but also in courage as news comes out of Punjab of a huge pro-Khalistan rally in complete defiance of the Indian government. We discuss Modi's visit to Canada. Is it a new era in Indo-Canadian relations, or is Modi using it as a headline grabber against Pakistan, Indian minorities and the global Khalistan movement? Meanwhile, India breaks ground on a huge e-waste facility. Is it just window dressing for one of the world's most polluted countries, one asks? And the pantheon of women in sport has a new hero as we celebrate the UK's first female professional Sikh boxer. All this and more on today's show. But joining me, as always, is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. Make sure you stay tuned throughout the week. On Thursday, we'll have a special report on the G7 summit with Modi showing up there. We'll be talking about road closures and open areas of Kananaskis, so anybody going there to protest or rally, you'll know what areas to avoid and where you can safely protest. So once again, stay tuned for that on Thursday, but we hope you enjoy the shows between now and then. And I guess actually that'll be Friday morning that airs. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed, and James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And at the end of the show, as always, we'll show you a load of your comments which have been pouring in beneath the video. So thank you for those. Right, James, as always, loads to get through this morning. What are you going to start us off with today?
Let's take a look at the e-waste facility. Right now, India has just announced that they've broken ground on an 11.4-acre facility to deal with the e-waste in the country. Now, this is in New Delhi, and it's not expected that it'll process all of the e-waste, but it is expected to take about 50 tons of it out of the landfills within the first year. This is a big announcement for the simple fact that we know the pollution problems and the environmental disaster that is India, and it goes from coast to coast there. And when I say coast to coast, I'm speaking as a Canadian because we've got coasts all around us. But in any event, the economy in terms of dealing with the e-waste can be quite substantial. So therefore, there is an opportunity for certain companies to get in on the ground floor and start making revenue once this site is up and opened. It's also hoped that it'll be a world-class leading facility and that it can be duplicated across the nation once the first one gets built and is in service. They'll have an opportunity to work out any bugs and to get a system in place to start introducing it elsewhere. The real question, though, is what they are doing with this e-waste facility. Now, is it just paving a way for a circular economy, or more likely, is it just something that Modi is setting up so that he can look as though he is dealing with the environmental catastrophe that is in parts of India? We know that the rivers are being fed with a lot of chemicals and runoff from certain manufacturing facilities. That in turn, of course, is water that is used not only downstream for regular living that needs to be boiled and potentially have toxins in it, but also when it is used to feed the crops and to water the fields, that again is taking those toxins out of the river and putting them into the soil, which again contaminates that area. So is this really enough to bring Modi and the India government in line with the climate change commitments that they have? I don't think it is, but I think it is a major first step. If they do actually follow through true to heart and make this a national initiative, it definitely goes a long way to removing a lot of those waste products out of the landfills and those facilities, and instead incites recycling and reuse, which is essential. And most other countries, or at least Western nations, have had recycling programs in place for years. And it's about time that India has caught up to that. Whether or not, as I said, they start to look at the other challenges that are faced is another problem. And even when you look at the water system and the rights, they not only are polluting the water in the rivers, but also rediverting it sometimes from reaching places like the Punjab, which is desperately needing the water for their crops. This is the breadbasket of India, and if they are having water diverted away from them, then other sources may not be as safe or contaminant free as they would need for the crops to be safe for human consumption. This is also impacting the Punjab region of Pakistan as well, because India has been diverting water in response to recent geopolitical tensions between the two nations. Now, when we go back to the recycling aspect of it, is this going to be a major step forward or a major step backwards? We're going to have to watch and see. We'll have to really pay attention. And a lot of environmental groups are applauding that it is a major first step. But again, like me, Angus, they are very reserved in their hopes for India to invest a lot more money into the other more pressing climate concerns and safety concerns for the country.
Yes, the countries like India and China, I suppose, do follow a fairly familiar pattern of growth and development, in that the first priority as these countries sort of emerge is we've got to grow as fast as we can, as quickly as possible. We've got to increase and grow our economies and damn the cost. You know, who cares? We've just got to grow. We've got to compete with the world. And so they, and this is exactly what India and China did, exactly the same. They grew their industrial base, and of course in doing so they created huge amounts of pollution. And of course, being the cheap manufacturers of the world, this is where the global production was located to, places like China and then subsequently India. And of course the manufacturers there really just didn't care. All they cared about was just trying to build, make money and grow their economies. And so the byproduct of that was huge industrial pollution. And it's only as countries develop and grow and mature that then start growing a bit of a conscience, because of course the eyes of the world starts looking at them and saying, hang on, you can't just get away with this indefinitely. You now need to start thinking about the mess that you're creating in the environment. And this is now what's happening with India. It happened with China, I have to say, quite a bit before India. China woke up to this quite a long time ago. Of course, China was very much the production platform for global commerce. Just about every good on this planet at one stage was almost built in China. But they did wake up to this fact, and China does have a very, I would say, a very extensive and fast-growing environmentalist movement, let's call it, and they have treated and dealt with pollution in a very, I would say, almost a ruthless way. They tend to go about everything fairly ruthlessly. India is a bit slow to the party on this one, and of course India has, as we know, this terrible pollution problem. I mean, I do remember even 2 years ago, and actually on an annual basis, reporting on the dreadful smogs of Delhi. Now, that is partly also to do with agricultural burning. It's not just industry, but again, it is just a general pollution across India is extraordinary. It literally is one of the most polluted countries on the planet. And again, we talk about the pollution in the Punjab, specifically the rivers, the poor rivers that are suffering with just industrial effluent that are turning those beautiful rivers black with pollution and causing desperate cases of cancer right across that whole state. So India has a real problem, and India really needs to address this. But it is also it's a by problem in the sense that it actually the problem has its roots in two areas. Firstly, it is India itself, that is the manufacturer, but it is also the responsibility of the West. It is the West that in many cases are employing Indian workers to produce their goods and materials. And therefore the West has a responsibility to be a little bit more environmentally conscious, which it is to a large degree, but it needs to be a little bit more ruthless itself with India and say, we will only buy your goods, the goods that you manufacture, if you can prove that they have a clean slate, a clean environmental slate. So they have to pressure the Indian government, and the Indian government will only move under pressure, certainly external pressure. So the West has this responsibility to ensure that India is pressured enough to change its ways. And there are signs, and it's good to see at least there are signs that India is taking its responsibilities a little more seriously now. is it a drop in the ocean? At least it's a start, and every little bit helps. It does have quite an extensive renewables program. It is linked, of course, to a lot of the billionaires making an awful lot of money in India, who tend to be Modi's friends. But ultimately, it has this renewables program, which is, again, assisting in this overall green movement, which is growing. Unfortunately, the green movements do tend to come a little bit later in that development cycle of a nation going from third world to first world. But nonetheless, it is happening in India, and little signs like this, even though they may be relatively small, at least they are signs, or a sign that India is growing a conscience, that it is trying to do something about it, but it is really just a little bit small to start with. We need a lot more of this, James, and India does need to mature a little bit more on its environmental aspects.
Absolutely. And of course, there is the concern of all of these things going into landfills and what they call the forever chemicals as well, not only from this, but other forms of waste that are not being recycled when they could be. And, I just want to bring up Dr. Verena Akora's statement that she said these substances don't break down in nature and are increasingly found in drinking water, soil, and even human bloodstreams. And again, she's referring to the forever chemicals. She says managing e-waste is essential, but a full spectrum strategy is needed to address all hazardous materials. And then closing that off, she also stated that this is a blueprint for focused action, but the next steps are recognizing that sustainability must extend beyond recycling. It must include prevention, intervention, innovation, and urgent policy reform. So again, that is just a statement there. But at the end of the day, is this really a big leap forward, or is it just because of the fact that he will be attending the G7 summit next week in Canada? And one of the topics, of course, that's expected to be discussed is environmental concerns and environmental issues. So is this his way of kind of padding the way for his conversations at the G7 summit? We'll have to wait and see, and only time will tell, as they say, Angus. But on that subject, of course, we know that there are other situations going on around the world. And with that, we brought up the G7 summit already. We've been talking about the excitement of the G7 in terms of what potential it has. But will that excitement really follow through to action? That's waiting to see. The real question that people are asking is Modi's inclusion in the G7 summit this year, is that diplomacy trying to reset the stage, or is it strictly a double standard? Now, of course, we know that during the G7, there are going to be major restrictions out on the streets and access to certain parts of Kananaskis. Kananaskis is close to Canmore, which is a bit southeast of Banff National Park. So again, it is a beautiful, picturesque, but it's really the hosting of the summit from the 15th to 17th is supposed to shine a spotlight on collaboration on climate action, again, tying into that first story, but also trade security in the Indo-Pacific region's power balance. And that, again, is a big issue. Now, if you look at the India media, which is something that I've been paying attention closely to see how they are interpreting this, they're actually coming out and really pushing a narrative on behalf of Modi that this is Canada bowing down to India, that it shows the world needs India and their power more than they need us. So they're really taking that stance on it. Moving on from there, it's also a concern when you're talking about the transnational repression. The actual India news is reporting that this also is a way to show, basically to slap the face of every person that's involved in the Khalistan movement or any other minority group in India that's fighting for sovereignty, independence, or at least some type of autonomy. And that would, of course, include the Kashmir region. So they are really pushing the narrative that it's a pro-India event, that it is something that is going to demonstrate that Canada is no longer supporting the Khalistan movement and those people acting in favor favor of an independent Sikh nation. And this is the farthest from the truth, because Canada will not back down on their insistence to not only allow a free and democratic referendum process, the debate, the call for a referendum in India. I mean, these are things that Canadians highly respect in terms of democracy, and at no point in time do we see that this is a shift from supporting those democratic rights of anybody in Canada, let alone the Khalistan movement. Now, of course, this is something that is really up and being debated between different communities, especially within the Sikh community. And Gurpreet Sandhu, a Vancouver-based Sikh human rights advocate, said this isn't a principled diplomacy. It is, he called it, an appeasement in a designer's suit, which I really love that statement. And essentially, he's just saying that, it's Canada trying to appease to move forward with diplomatic processes. But again, it is causing a lot of debate, both here in Vancouver, within our community, but across the nation and around the world. When we take a look at this, India's response, when you look at this, of course, as I said, they've been just going gangbusters on social media and in their propaganda media machines, just really trying to say how this is pro-Indian, that everybody needs them. So there was Dr. Malhotra had stated, India represents a swing state in the global order. He's a geopolitical analyst at the University of Toronto, and also said you don't isolate a partner like that, you engage and try to influence from within. So I thought that was an important statement, because again, is that that's the hope, I think, of a lot of people, is trying to put pressure on Modi, but by inviting him to the G7, it allows a restoration of the communication and the bilateral cooperation between the two nations. To have that first face-to-face, I think, is essential, because then Prime Minister Mark Carney can just lay his cards on the table directly in front of Modi, with no people running in between as messengers. I think that it's important at that point. But it also gives Modi the opportunity to really address any concerns that he has. Take that even further, though, that the India media is also stating that when Modi arrives, he's going to be demanding that, or trying to work with Canada to get some, what they term terrorists on their wanted list, deported from Canada. So they're talking about extraditions, and that being a part of the G7 summit, which I really don't think is going to happen. I don't think that there's going to be any talks about any type of expulsion of any Canadians to India, or and even in return. I don't think that's going to be a part of the conversation. I think that there's going to be conversation about the transnational repression, but I don't think it's going to be something that they want to get too deep into at this point. I think that there will be mentions of it, and trying to open the door to further communications to resolve the issues, and to really put India on notice that we are not going to tolerate their influence or their meddling in Canadian institutions, Canadian policy, Canadian law, and of course in the lives of Canadian citizens, Angus.
Yes, I think when you analyse situations like this, I always revert to an old maxim called WIFM, W-I-F-M, which stands for What's in it for me? And you've got to look at each side involved in these talks, each stakeholder, and work out what is in it for each stakeholder. Well, for India, it's obvious. For Narendra Modi, he is being invited to the top table, albeit temporarily, but he's asked to join the great G7 nations for their annual meeting. And so, of course, yes, the optics for him are great. You know, the world's cameras are on him, shaking hands with the G7 leaders. He can once again bestride that world stage saying, look at me, I'm the leader of the world's largest democracy. The optics for India are fantastic. It legitimizes his government. It legitimizes everything he is doing, at least on the face of it. So what's in it for India? It's all pretty obvious. So the real question then is, what is in it for the other nations? Well, for Canada particularly as host, House. What is in it for Canada? Well, Mark Carney, for regular viewers, you'll know my particular views of Mark Carney. I deeply distrust the man. He is a World Economic Forum advocate. He is a globalist. Is he a liberal? Is he a Canadian liberal? Does he really care about those within the party, of the Liberal Party? Does he care about his liberal electorate? I honestly don't think so. I think his main agenda is primarily spreading the agenda of the World Economic Forum, the globalists, and that is this global sort of trade, global commerce, and it's decentralizing everything from local governments up until ultimately this sort of conspiratorial concept of one world government. I think that's what Mark Carney is all about. So as part of that agenda, of course, he's going to welcome Narendra Modi. He doesn't really care about human rights. He doesn't really care about what's going on in the ground in India. He doesn't care about India's minorities, in my personal opinion. All he cares about is driving this single goal, this single agenda, which is pushing towards this sort of global government, at least this sort of globalized community where individual nations become less and less relevant. And I think that's what Khan is about. Now, what about all the other G7 leaders? Well, there's an interesting phrase there that you used, James, which was one of them had said it's important that we engage and we influence from within. Of course, I think a lot of the leaders ultimately are probably concerned to some degree about human rights. I think ultimately, with all these nations, ultimately it is always trumped by dollars, by dollar signs, commerce. Really, everybody, all these leaders are primarily driven about what's in it for me, more trade. That's what's in it for most of those G7, if not all of those G7 leaders. I still believe human rights falls quite a long way down that ladder. Now, the question, though, is how far up in each nation's ladder of priorities are human rights? And each nation will look at those differently. The US, the UK, whatever, they all have those human rights will be slightly at different levels of their list of priorities, let's say their top 10 priorities to bring up with Narendra Modi. But ultimately, the question is, are human rights going to be raised? Only, I think, as a last resort. It is more important, as I say, back to this quote, to engage and influence from within. I think ultimately all these G7 nations are concerned about their own individual optics, and each nation's people will be looking to their leaders and saying, and many people will be saying, and certainly from the UK, we will be saying to Starmer, well, did you bring up human rights? It's all very well meeting Narendra Modi, but what about the Sikhs and the Muslims and even the Christians in India? You know, have you raised that with Narendra Modi? And people like Starmer or Trump, or whichever G7 leader it happens to be, Macron, whoever, they're all going to think, okay, well, we've got to have, obviously, we've got to engage. But this question, can we influence from within? And I'll tell you from the Brexit discussions, which have been obsessive here in the UK, we tried to influence the EU from within. We became part of the European Union under this argument, this specious argument that we could influence the EU from within. We were one of 27 countries, but we felt that we were powerful enough within the EU to influence the European agenda. Were we? Heck. We had almost zero influence on the EU agenda. That's a lesson that we learned. And I have to say the Remainers are still adamant, oh yes, we could have influenced. Absolute nonsense. All the evidence from every angle, however you analyse the evidence, we had virtually no influence in the European Union. And that is essentially the same, I think, with the G7 over India. Yes, you can engage. Yes, you can bring Narendra Modi to that top table. Will you influence him? The only way you will influence Narendra Modi is through brute force, is through blackmail, is through threats, is through pressure. Modi will only bend when he has to. Modi has his own agenda. Nothing is stopping that agenda unless he is pressured otherwise to do so. He won't be influenced, he will be pressured. If he has no choice, that is the only way that he will change. So that responsibility falls on the other G7 leaders. The question then is, James, is the will there amongst the other G7 leaders to pressure Modi to change? What's in it for me? Well, look at each of those G7 nations and there's your answer. And unfortunately, it's probably what's in it for me is commerce, is dollars. There's a 1.4 billion people market. That's the main driver here, James.
Absolutely. And with that, of course, a Canadian diplomat was quoted as saying that the summit provides a platform for difficult issues and that human rights are on the agenda and they will be raised. But the question is, will they really, or is that just trying to appease people to cut down on the frustration or emotion of having Modi attend? That we'll have to watch and see, Angus, and we'll go from there. So, but again, I'll be watching very closely as to what happens at the G7. I'm just working to see if I can work out my scheduling and other things to attend. But we'll have to watch and see what happens.
Indeed. I'll look forward to that report, James. Right, let's move on to my first story. Let's scale down from global geopolitics down to a smaller scale. Let's go down to the United States and the US House, where a Republican congresswoman by the name of Mary Miller, who represents Illinois, has really stuck her head into a hornet's nest and re-emerged rather stung. What she did last week, at the end of last week, a Sikh grand thief from southern New Jersey did the morning prayers in the US House. As is traditional, they start the session with morning prayers, and this time they invited a Sikh to deliver the morning prayers. As a result, Mary Miller was a little bit put out by this. She posted on X. She said that she found it deeply troubling that someone of the Muslim faith, she mistakenly put to start with, had been allowed to lead the prayers in the House, and it should never have been allowed. America was founded as a Christian nation, she said. I believe our government should reflect that truth, not drift further from it. May God have mercy. Indeed, well, I dare say, Ms. Miller, I hope God has a bit more mercy on you than everybody else has. Well, some of the backlash was pretty swift and pretty brutal, and it was cross-party and not just cross-party. I mean, for example, the Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said, "It's deeply troubling that such an ignorant and hateful extremist is serving in the Congress." That would be you, Mary. David Valadao from her own party, the Republican Party, he represents California, said, "I'm troubled by my colleague's remarks about this morning's Sikh prayer, which has since been deleted." Now, of course, she was a bit silly. She said, to start with, she said, how dare a Muslim address us, actually thinking it was a Muslim. I mean, again, the ignorance runs deep with poor Ms. Miller. And she then changed her tweet to say it was a Sikh when she was obviously corrected and realised it. And ultimately she did delete the tweet, realising it was slightly embarrassing. As David Valadao says, throughout the country and in the Central Valley, Sikh Americans are valued and respected members of our community. Yet they continue to face harassment and discrimination. Another Democrat, Jared Huffman, he's the US House member, again from California, he said, "I often say that I serve in Congress with some of the greatest minds of the 18th century. With Miller, I may need to take it back a few more centuries." Another Democrat, Bonnie Watson Coleman from New Jersey, and that's the state where the Granthi originated from. Bonnie said, "It's deeply troubling that someone with such contempt for religious freedom is allowed to serve in this body. This should never have been allowed to happen. America was founded as a free nation. I believe the conduct of its legislators should reflect that truth, not drift further from it." Another Democratic congresswoman said, "What's deeply disturbing is the blatant ignorance and anti-Sikh, anti-Muslim xenophobia coming from my colleague across the aisle. There is no place in our country, and especially the halls of Congress, for this hate and intolerance." And I think that what's really important about this story is it's not just a simple basic bigotry and fundamental stupidity of it. She actually mistakenly called him a Muslim. And this actually has quite a deep resonance because, of course, post 9/11, when 9/11 happened, the first victim of hate crime wasn't a Muslim. It was a Sikh. It was some poor, innocent Sikh man who was murdered by an idiot, basically, by a racist idiot, as a backlash to the attack on the Twin Towers. And this idiot came across this Sikh guy. I think he was in a petrol station. What do you call it? Anyway, a petrol station. We call it here in the UK. And he was murdered just by some racist idiot, thinking he was a Muslim. Of course he wasn't. He was a Sikh. But could he tell the difference? No, they're all the same, according to these people. So again, there's resonance in that mistake of Congresswoman Miller. Again, that idiotic bigotry. And of course, the organisations as well hit back very strongly. The Sikh coalition responded very, very robustly to say, to be clear, deleting the tweet is not enough. Miller should apologise for her remarks to both the Sikh and the Muslim communities, because no one should be targeted on the basis of their identity. Now, I did say actually that from surprising quarters, of all places, even the Hindu American Foundation actually hit back as well. The HAF we often criticise on here. We say it basically is a front for the RSS. But even the HAF came out with a response saying whichever version of the tweet was going with, it is racist, xenophobic, plainly un-American to lash out over a Sikh prayer. When you took your oath of office, you swore to uphold our Constitution, whose First Amendment prohibits your establishing an official religion or favouring one religion over another. And again, and I think that's probably, I have to say, rooted in the fact that the HAF, again, what's in it for us? Well, we're also we're Hindus, so of course it could equally apply to us, this xenophobia. So I think that's rooted there. I don't think it was pro-Sikh. I don't think they were specifically defending the Sikhs. They were just saying, no, you can't target any of us who are non-Christians. So I think that's the what's in it for me from the HAF. But ultimately, so again, there were a lot of responses that were pretty robust. And I think one response actually, which came on Facebook, and it was just from an individual, SP Singh Makar, which I think responded beautifully to this, and I think says it all really. Let me read you what this gentleman said in reference to Mary Miller's tweet. He said, it's deeply concerning and demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of American values and the Sikh faith. Sikhs have a long history of contributing to American society. Our faith emphasises service, equality, interfaith harmony. We believe in one God and the equality of all people, regardless of their backgrounds or beliefs. The Constitution guarantees freedom of religion for all its citizens, and this includes the rights for individuals of any faith to participate fully in public life. And this refers to this sort of Christian arrogance, I have to say, of Congresswoman Miller, where she said the US was founded on Christian values. No, it wasn't. It was founded on all values of equality. In other words, all faiths. It did not specifically say we are a Christian nation. The Constitution actually recognises the freedom of all faiths. That's a major fundamental mistake she made and misunderstanding she made. To suggest that a non-Christian leading a prayer somehow undermines the nation is to deny the rich tapestry of faiths that make up America. Such prayers were performed during the time of the Republican Party's nominee for president. Yes, if you remember, the Ardas were given at the first major gathering of Trump's Republican Party. Again, that's how the Republican Party as an organisation respects all faiths, and particularly the Sikh faith. And he continues, furthermore, the initial misidentification of the Sikh man as a Muslim highlights a disturbing lack of awareness. Yes, indeed. A tendency to generalise and stereotype minorities. Sikhs have a distinct identity. It's crucial for public figures to educate themselves and respect these distinctions. Sikhs have always been proud Americans who uphold the values of justice, compassion and religious liberty. Indeed they do. We believe that true strength lies in embracing diversity, not in seeking to exclude or marginalise any group based on their faith. The incident serves as a reminder of the ongoing need to educate and advocate for religious understanding and, key word here, inclusion in our society. I think that comment is beautifully written, absolutely sums up everything that I would want to say about this, James. I think Congresswoman Miller is probably hiding a little bit in embarrassment and shame after her tweet. The dangers of X, I would say.
Yeah, for anybody to come out and to state this, especially a sitting politician, is just disgraceful. With the Constitution of the United States, it starts out with the words, we the people. It doesn't say we the people except, we the people including. No, it just says we the people, and therefore encompassing every person in the United States. And that for her to come out and be so disrespectful to citizens of the country, and to not even understand the right religion or background of the culture, anything is just inherently ignorant. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot more of that, not just in politics, but in society, where people have this platform online and they use it without actually engaging any brain cells before they actually post things. And that is a sad statement and a sad reality of our current society. So yeah, no, she needs to be held accountable. And I would say that nothing short of a resignation for the ignorance that she's displayed.
Indeed, and as I say, the backlash was pretty robust from all angles, including even the HAF. So I dare say that Congresswoman Miller will be a little bit embarrassed at the moment. So, but as I say, there are those calling for not just a deletion of the tweet, but a public apology and prostrating herself in front of public opinion in the most humble way and humiliating way is what she deserves. Anyway, let us move on, James, and let me show you this video. Look at this video. This is encouraging. Now, a sea of yellow pro-Khalistan flags. And if I told you that was in Amritsar, that will give you an idea of just how powerful the Khalistan movement is now becoming. Because yes, we've seen across the diaspora, we've seen that wonderful sea of yellow Khalistan flags across every gathering, whether it's a 1984 commemoration, whether it's the referendum, whatever it is, whatever gathering of Sikhs across the diaspora, we do see this wonderful sea of yellow Khalistan flags. But of course, in the Punjab, where supposedly democratic India it does allow the freedom of speech, or so it claims. If you display Khalistan flags or you campaign publicly for the referendum, even just a basic referendum for Khalistan, you probably, in most occasions, end up locked up like Amritsar Singh and others. It takes a brave man or lady to stand up and campaign for Khalistan in the Punjab these days. Yet, here we have, over the weekend, in Amritsar itself, we have this huge pro-Khalistan rally. This is a perfect sign of this is no longer a peripheral movement. This, in fact, was it ever a peripheral movement? No, it wasn't. In other words, Mr. Modi's and his cohorts, critics of Khalistan, who say it's just a fringe movement, it's just an extremist minority, it's just a bunch of terrorists. Well, stick this in your pipe and smoke it, Mr. Modi. I'm afraid it is not a peripheral fringe extremist movement. It is mainstream. Even now, it has become so mainstream. It's not just in the diaspora. This is happening in the Punjab itself. People are realizing and joining hands together. This is when we say grassroots movements topple governments, because when people realize they are not alone, when people realize that their views, their opinions are not just isolated, they are not just little islands, there are others who think the same way, they join hands, they talk to each other, they realize, actually, you know what, I am not alone in believing this. There is strength in numbers. This is what's happening now with the Khalistan movement. More and more people across the Punjab are realizing that they are not alone. They are not alone in believing in this great concept of Khalistan. As they are joining hands now, they are talking, they are gaining that courage. There is strength in numbers. They are realizing we have the courage now to take to the streets because there are more of us than of you. Is that we can now get out there and be heard. We can be seen. We can fly the Khalistan flag because the movement is that powerful now. It is that popular, and there's the key word. It is that popular. The referendum is proving right across the world that the Khalistan movement is hugely popular. It has this enormous groundswell of public support, even outside the Sikh community. There are others outside the Sikh community, as we have evidence on many occasions, who support this idea of Khalistan. So I'm delighted to say, James, even just this simple sign of this huge march through Amritsar over recent days, the Khalistan movement is there, it is growing in strength, but most importantly, it is growing in courage. This is a sign of things to come, is that Mr. Modi, I'm afraid you are going to have to bow. I talked earlier about pressure. Well, here's pressure from the grassroots of the Punjab. This is pressure from the people of the Punjab. If you're a democracy, then respect our democratic right, firstly, to campaign, secondly, to voice our opinions through a referendum. Give us the Khalistan referendum. If you believe, Mr. Modi, that we are minority, then we dare to give us a referendum. Prove that you're right. Prove that we are wrong. Give us that referendum in the Punjab, and then let's see. If we are wrong, we'll just go away quietly. But you prove us wrong, Mr. Modi. You give us our referendum. There you go, James. I would say a very, very encouraging sign coming out of the Punjab.
Absolutely. And a caveat to that is that a referendum with international oversight. Because I wouldn't trust Modi on a regular referendum without having some type of international oversight. And something tells me that the United Nations would more than be happy to come in and oversee it to ensure that no shenanigans happen, Angus.
Absolutely right. Free and fair elections. That's what is demanded, and that is what will be expected. Most important, of course. And then finally, let me just wrap up today. We often celebrate Sikh sportsmen and the achievements of the men in Sikh sports. But I also always, whenever possible, highlight high-achieving Sikh women in sport. Now, sport, of course, is so important to the Sikh community, whether it's in the diaspora or whether in the Punjab itself, and of course right across India. But sports are a fundamental part of the Sikh psyche, the Sikh philosophy. Why? Because I think its roots stem back to those wonderful historic days of its rich history, its military history. Of course, Sikhs were renowned globally for their military prowess, their hugely courageous, brave ability to fight. They were some of the best, and still are probably some of the best fighters on the planet. They are driven by a huge capability and motivation. So it is that it is rooted in that deep military prowess that sports, of course, sports really are the modern day equivalent of fighting battles. You know, they are the peaceful, more amicable ways of competing. And of course, sports, therefore, is such an important part of the Sikh community and Sikh society, whether you're playing hockey or whether it's boxing or whatever. Well, talking about boxing, I am so delighted to report that a lady called Sharon Kaur Desai here in the UK has become the first British-born Sikh professional female boxer. Let me play you. This is a report from the BBC. Have a look at this.
I've created history and I've only just started. Yes, it was a lot of pressure, but what can you say? Pressure makes diamonds.
What was the kind of reaction that you had from the community before you went pro?
There's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of comments like, are you sure it's what you want to do? How are you going to get married? Shouldn't you be in the kitchen? Stuff like that. It was quite negative.
And then when you won your first pro game by knockout, what were these people saying then?
Oh, they was all on to me. It was, I'm so proud of you. I knew you could do it. I had just everyone messaging me out of nowhere, like how proud they was.
And what's your message to British Asian women who are considering boxing?
Just do it. You can do anything you put your mind to.
So how fantastic is that? I mean, this girl, I mean, she has not just overcome just the general barriers that most women face in sport anyway. She's also come across all the barriers that are there for Asian women as well. It is extraordinarily difficult for women in sport to break through into high levels, and of course she's broken through every barrier that exists and has become this, as you say, the first British Sikh professional boxer. Boxing, of course, is a huge area for the Sikh community. That we've got some very successful male British boxers. So for her to break through into the female side, well done to her, well done to Sharon. I think that's an incredible achievement. We'll be watching her career with interest. I certainly wouldn't argue with her. She's clearly a highly motivated lady and clearly a highly skilled lady, high achieving. So well done to her, James. And you're on mute again, James.
Keep hitting that just as I'm looking at something. Anyways, yeah, and it's about 80 degrees in the studio today for some reason, so I had to keep turning the AC on and muting in between, so my apologies. But in any event, yeah, it just goes to show, though, that with dedication and devotion to sport or to any other thing in your life, that you can achieve great things. And I think that the realization here is that she will not only be a leader within the Sikh community, but I think internationally for all girls that are looking to get into sport down the road. The higher the profile of the individual women's sports, of course, that inspires young ladies and young girls to participate and to achieve greatness, because they can actually visualize themselves in that role later in life, Angus.
Indeed, well done to her. And to quote her fantastic phrase, pressure makes diamonds. She clearly is a diamond amongst the community. So well done to you, Sharon, and the best of luck with your career. Right, James, let's move on as the clock counts down. As always, let's move on to our comments column. Sadly, we couldn't do comments yesterday because we ran out of time. But anyway, today, let's take a look at loads of comments. Unfortunately, we couldn't cover so many wonderful comments that have come in because we did run out of time yesterday. So I'll cover as many as we can today. TC starts us off. Indeed, we talked a lot about 1984. We showed that video yesterday, that incredible video of Bhindranvali and the events leading up to the Operation Blue Star and that terrible attack on the Darbar Sahib. As TC says, never forget 1984. Let Me Check also says, never forget, never forgive. Remember, never ever forgive anyone who ever did this. Absolutely. And M. Verdi again wraps up the same theme. Very painful, unfortunate act of the Indian government on its own people. Thanks to both of us for telling the truth to the world. Well, it's not just us, it's just everybody. The diaspora came out in huge numbers over the last few weeks to commemorate those first few days of June, 41 years ago. We must never forget what happened in 1984. Those events were absolutely horrific. They were horrendous. They're a stain on India's history. And again, we must never forget. But as Bhindranvali said, pretty much around that sort of time, he said the events that are happening now will forge the foundations of Khalistan. And as the attack basically unfolded, he reportedly said this will form those foundations of Khalistan, as indeed those words were prescient, because Operation Blue Star, all it did, apart from was massacre a lot of innocent men, women and children, it did indeed absolutely create those basic huge foundations for Khalistan. It drove a lot of people towards the whole idea of Khalistan. So his legacy is enormous. Those martyrs did not die in vain, because their legacy has really absolutely lit the fires of that roaring fire that is now the Khalistan movement, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And let's face it, that was a great video. I'd actually seen it prior to you showing it yesterday. And I think we've actually used little snippets here and there of that video over the last several weeks there, or at least some of the images that were also used there. So I think that the awareness, the education has reached beyond just the Sikh population, just beyond the India diaspora, but I think that it is really resonating with a lot of people who are feeling that maybe their voices aren't heard, and this is giving inspiration outside of the Sikh community as well, Angus.
Absolutely right. So no, we will never forget 84, and we, like all the channels covering this area, is we will never let the world forget the events of 1984, as I say, because it's so fundamental to why we can justify the establishment of Khalistan. Let's get philosophical with Punjab 84, who says everyone is born alone. And I think this is deeply philosophical, because yes, we all come into this world naked and alone, and we all leave this world basically naked and alone, James. It's quite sad in many ways.
I've heard that before, yeah.
And Live, Laugh, Creation. This is an educational comment. The fifth guru, Sri Guru Arjan Dev Ji, he wasn't the one who instituted the name Singhs. Of course, using Singh, that came from the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji. And when the 10th Guru gave Amrit Pan, then it was mandatory to use Singh for men and Kaur for women. Of course, Singh meaning lion, Kaur meaning princess. So thank you for reminding us. Yes, indeed, it was the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, who was responsible when he created the Khalsa. It was he who then said that all men, all Sikh men must be named Singh, lion, and all women, Sikh women, must be named Kaur, princesses. And I mean, how honorific to be named either a lion or a princess, James.
Do you know, and it's funny because I'd always wondered about that, and I meant to look it up a few times. So thank you for explaining that, because yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Indeed it is. Thank you, Live Laugh Creation, for your educational comment reminding us that. Now, Amrit Singh, June 1984, interesting again, so many names refer to 1984 for very good reason, is that the community will not forget 1984. Anyway, Amrit Singh, June 1984, a few days ago, in fact, a while ago, came up with this sign and I couldn't work out what on earth it meant. So thank you to all of you. And there were so many in our comments who did actually educate James and myself what that symbol meant. Stay safe again started us off with, it means Ek Onkar. Of course, it means God, one supreme, the creator, energy of all energies, the most high. It is the most powerful meaning. Amakaira, likewise, Ik Onkar, it's the first word of the Guru Granth Sahib. I didn't even know that. So again, thank you for letting us know. It is the first word in the Holy Scriptures, the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Ik Onkar, it means God is one, etc. Absolutely. Emphasizing the belief in one supreme reality, oneness of God, the interconnectedness of all beings. And Hat B says it means Ik Onkar, which is the first word in the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. It means there is one God. So actually there are lots and lots of different interpretations of what it actually means, of course, and that's the beauty of a symbol. A picture paints 1,000 words. Yes, this symbol is everything that describes God. You can't describe God in a word, in a sentence, even a phrase. You cannot describe God other than graphically, because that simple symbol represents everything that we know about what God is. And of course, you can't put that into simple words, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And, it's beautiful that we have this interaction with our audience because it allows them to teach us and to really and correct us at times. So, yeah, it's beautiful. And we deeply appreciate the interaction with the audience. So thank you very much for interacting, for giving us the knowledge and helping on our journey to learn more. So thank you.
Indeed we do. So thank you to our audience. Keep doing this. We do love to be educated about these little snippets of the faith. It's, as I say, it's been a huge learning journey for James and myself. And in turn, for those who are not amongst the community, who are not Sikhs, we do have a few people who are non-Sikhs who do watch this channel. And so it's very educational for them as well. So do keep these things coming in. It's great to talk about them. Right, Critics Corner does make a return. Hooray! Truth is Winner, who's one of our regular appearers on Critics Corner. Thank you, Truth is Winner, for your comment. Sikhs have no capable person and employed some Goras. Yes, some white people. That is James and myself. And what your claim is that there is nobody in the Sikh community who's capable of producing a channel like ours. Well, okay, let's pick this comment apart. What you're basically saying is there's nobody good enough in the Sikh community that they've had to employ two middle-aged white people like James and myself. Well, ultimately, how obviously silly that comment is, basically because there are loads and loads of very, very good Punjabi channels or channels fronted by some very, very articulate, very educated, very highly qualified Sikhs from the community. And even our own channel, Satluj TV, we have Surinder and his colleagues on the Punjabi side who are extraordinarily intelligent, well-educated, informative. Do watch, if you're a Punjabi speaker, go look at our Punjabi channel. But why James and I were brought in is because we've talked about this educational journey, is because we're hoping that for our audience it is highly educational, they're highly entertaining, as indeed many have said. It's very funny to watch James and I clumsily muddling our way through learning about the Sikh community, the Sikh religion, what it's all about, because we bring the clues in the name. We bring our perspectives, a completely different perspective to the news in the Sikh community, to issues about the Sikh community. In other words, you're not just existing in an echo chamber. It's not just Sikhs talking about Sikh issues. It's about two white guys who have absolutely no idea what Sikhs, who originally had no idea what Sikhs were about, what the Sikh religion was. It's about how we come across Sikh issues, and it's our interpretation. We give a completely objective perspective on these issues. So that's why we were brought in. It's nothing to do with the lack of capability within the Sikh community. So thank you, Truth is Winner. But more importantly, stay safe. I think the responses, I think, were important. I wanted to make sure I brought these responses up. Stay safe demands that we have this user deleted. But Truth is Winner comes back and says, look, freedom of speech. And I have to say, I totally agree with you, Truth is Winner. We will never, and we do never, ban people from our channel. We never remove comments unless they are absolutely rude and full of swear words. That's the only time we've ever not displayed a comment. But we have always, without exception, allowed any critical comment. We have never removed any of our critics from our thing because we believe, as you rightly say, truth is a winner, we believe in freedom of speech. We might not agree with you, we might fundamentally disagree with what you say, but we will always argue why we disagree with you. We will never remove or delete or censor, keyword there, we will never censor the comments on our channel. Very, very important that all our critics understand this. We feel free to come and criticize us, feel free to disagree with us, argue against us. That is your absolute fundamental democratic right, James.
Absolutely, and that brings several points, Angus, is that first and foremost, again, on the topic of censoring anybody's comments, this also acts as an opportunity for maybe somebody who is misdirected, somebody who misunderstands or misinterprets, for them to learn through the comments of our viewers or the online viewers in the online community to say, hey, I think you misunderstand this, or, back and forth. So it really gives an opportunity to teach other people how they may be misinterpreting or give them a new perspective, as the show's name is. Further to that, of course, it also provides an opportunity for people to speak their opinions to us and say, okay, great, we can look at that and not be offended. We can keep an open mind and understand where they're coming from and respect their right to say it, even if we disagree with it. So again, it's just about respecting each other, even when we disagree, which I think is an important lesson that has been lost the world over. As for the other part of that, in terms of them bringing the white guys in to do this, the way that I started out with Satledge TV is because I was reporting on the Khalistan issues, trying to bring an understanding to the Western world and to Caucasians and others outside of the Sikh community to understand what it was about, because I felt that that was important, that I didn't know enough about the Sikh community as I should, and then also that other people didn't understand what it was about either. So I thought, what an opportunity for me to be able to bring that education to a new audience and to allow for that furtherance of understanding, compassion, and acceptance that will help to hopefully alleviate some of the racism and the hatred that's going on in our streets. Education is a powerful tool, and that's what it's all about, isn't it, Angus?
It is absolutely that. And it's not just about it, it's about respect. It's also about we enjoy it. We love a little bit of banter. We're not afraid of being criticised. We enjoy the banter. We're always happy to take on somebody who wants to throw an insult or what have you at us, because basically it's fun. We are secure enough in our own abilities and capabilities that we enjoy the banter. So please do not be put off by having a go at us, because we'll be more than happy to have that bit of banter with you. And Killer.
Let's face it, I have an ex-wife. There's nothing that you can say that would be worse than that.
Absolutely right. Let's swiftly move on to Killer's comment. And Killer says, well, voices are being heard, they say, as they live outside of Punjab in countries that continue to increase trade with India and do nothing for Khalistanis. I can't wait for when in another 50 years you're saying the same thing. Well, actually, first of all, I would say that voices are being heard as they live outside of Punjab. Well, I've just shown a video of those within the Punjab who are campaigning for Khalistan. So sorry, Killer, is that the voices are now actually appearing in the Punjab itself. But yes, you are right, and again, it comes back to trade over human rights. Yes, I think that is a valid criticism. I think we have to keep holding our own governments up to account to saying, no, you've got to respect human rights. You can't just keep inviting India to create trade with India whilst ignoring human rights. So yes, I think there is a huge amount of hypocrisy here, Killer. I think you're absolutely right in that respect. And I do agree with you on that, James. I think that we still need to hold our own governments to account to saying, hang on, stop this hypocrisy. You've got to respect human rights.
Yeah. Absolutely, Angus, and that's what it all comes down to, is respecting the right of each other, like I said already in the previous comment there, and that is allowing the right of differences of opinion to still exist and try to feed off of that in terms of opening your own horizons to new ideas.
Indeed. So thank you, Killer, for your comment. Right, and last set of comments. Now, this is an interesting one. AS something or other says, You're happy with the Punjabi and English shows, but you need to post them in clips to break down the broadcast, no chapters. It's easy to get every message through when they're in snippets. Still keep the main show, but need small clips, more engagement, and for algorithms when pictures and titles explain that clip. Well, we do actually have shorts. Our editors, our editing team do post shorts where we do very, I think 1 or 2 minute little shorts that we do post up for that reason. And I put this comment up because I want to ask our audience, what, again, we need feedback to see how we're doing. We're doing it right. And we do post chapters. We still do this one main show that is round about an hour long. But people have said in the past, look, why do you do just lots of little stories? Well, good question. That's again why we brought the chapters in, so you can pick and choose, obviously, in the one main show, which bit you'd like to watch, because of course not everybody's interested in everything. One question we thought about, well, do we record the one big show and then literally break it up into, let's say, 10-minute stories? We break each story up into a separate thing. I don't know. Again, I'm interested in our audience's feedback. One thing that I would report is that probably over the next 4, 6, maybe 8 weeks, we will be, touch wood, going live. I will be. I've gone through a major studio renovation, so my studio will be a brand new studio in the coming weeks. So things are changing anyway. So as part of that change, I would ask our audience: is there anything you'd like us to do? We have noticed, and this might be related, might not be. Our viewing numbers are down considerably in the last week, 10 days. We believe this is something going on with YouTube. Again, I think we're under attack from Hindutva. We are being shadow banned. I know this because we do know people are having difficulty finding our videos. If you do a search for some of our specific videos, they don't appear in the search. Some of the podcasts, the guests on our podcast said, I searched for my video, I've looked for my name, it's not coming up when I search on YouTube. Yet the video is there. In other words, YouTube is throttling. It is shadow banning our videos. So our numbers are down. So we are under attack. Again, that's beholden on our audience. The only way we can fight back against that is to tell more people we exist. Spread the word. Tell more people about it. But please give us your feedback on what you think of the show, where we should be taking the show, anything that you think we could do to improve the show, James.
Absolutely. And again, when we go live, it's going to be a bit more of a challenge to break it up into segments, to break the live up that way as we're doing it. But again, in the rebroadcast that'll be available, then of course that may be a different story. So again, we've made a lot of adjustments over the last almost a year, Angus, we've been doing this. But yeah, we've made adjustments based on recommendations by our viewers. So again, we are open to that. And we try to listen to what you're saying and try to see if we can adapt to that to make sure that we have it accessible for the biggest audience possible, Angus.
Indeed. So please let us know your thoughts on that. You can, of course, message us directly if you don't want to put it in the comments as well. So anyway, and the final comments come from one of our regulars, SSI Singh, who says, hello friends, awesome program. And unfortunately, I have to say, most of the feedback we do get is very, very lovely and positive. So thank you. And this being one of them. All must watch and keep updated with where we are and what is happening. And M. Verdi thanks us again for speaking out for a minority of India. Of course, that is why we are here. And Paramjit Mangat finalizes the show with this lovely comment. Beautiful and soul-touching videos. Thank you so much. Guru Saib is showering his kirpa, and I had to look up this word again. Wonderful education. Kirpa means grace, kindness. So Guru Saib is showering his kindness and grace on both Jones and myself. Again, appreciate your support and helping raise awareness of our struggles. Well, on behalf of James and I, it is a pleasure and an honour to do this. We love doing this. We're very motivated. We've become very passionate about this because we believe in it. But again, appreciate our support. Well, we couldn't do this show without your support. So let me turn this back, as I always do, on our audience. It is your support that allows us to keep doing this. So thank you to you, our audience. Keep the comments coming, keep your support, and do tell others about our existence. That's how and why we can continue with the show, James, is it not?
Absolutely. And remember that under the video, there is the share option that you can share it out to other forms of social media, but it still just links directly to this video. So it goes towards our YouTube accounts as well and brings them in so that they have the option to subscribe directly on our YouTube as well. So yeah, if you're able to share the videos by that link, by all means, we would appreciate it.
Indeed it would be. But there we must bring perspectives to a close for another day. Please don't forget to keep those comments coming in, as indeed there have loads been coming in. So thank you for all of you who've contributed. Much appreciated. Don't forget you can message us at message@satlugetv.com directly. If there's anything you want to bring to our attention directly that you don't want to put in the public domain. But that is it for another day. Thank you so much for watching. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.